What's going on, everybody? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of California Underground. I'm here with my co-host, Camille. How are you doing tonight, Camille?
Good. Thank you. How are you, Phil?
I'm at a
Your audio just cut out. Did I cut out?
No, you didn't cut out.
Okay.
Can you still hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. But I missed whatever you said after rain.
Oh, I asked if there was a lot of rain up in Orange County as well.
Absolutely. We love it. We have no way to store it.
It's all running off into the ocean.
Another topic for another day.
Another topic for another day. A bill. There was no bill to address that specific concern. But the point of tonight's podcast is we're going to be talking a lot about new bills that are going into effect. So these are bills that were obviously legislature last year. They were signed into law by Gavin Newsom. I think we got, according to this Cal Matters article, they passed around 1,200 bills and nearly 1,000 became thanks to Gavin Newsom. So there were 1,000 new laws. We're not going to cover all 1,000. We're going to try and
just like 900.
Maybe
like
900
of them. Okay.
Yeah,
okay, sounds good.
We don't want to go on too long. We're going to try and do the highlights, some of the ones that are probably the most impactful, some that are typical California that are just kind of silly, and show you like when a legislature thinks we have to pass laws, they come up with all sorts of laws that they pass, whether they needed to pass them or not. But it just show that they are doing their job or pretending to do their job. So the question is which one do we start off with? Do we start off with like heavy, or do we start off with like a lighter one to kind of ease into it, and then we'll get into the more heavy ones? What's your thoughts?
Let's start light.
Okay. Let's start then with you sent me an article right before we came on a little bit ago, which was about jaywalking. And jaywalking, contrary to popular belief, it has been neutered in a sense of how strict they can be on jaywalking. So the law used to be if you crossed in a area of the street that was not a crosswalk, a police officer could come over and give you a ticket for jaywalking. I don't think I've ever seen anyone actually get a ticket for jaywalking. I certainly have never gotten a ticket for jaywalking. I see people running across the street all the time. No one's ever gotten a ticket for jaywalking. This must have been a huge issue that the California legislature spent time and our tax dollars on writing a law and passing this law that would reduce the likelihood that you would get a ticket for jaywalking, correct?
Correct. This was authored by someone in San Francisco, right?
I believe so. Yeah, he was very adamant about this law. And let me see if I can pull it up. But you had sent me the whole article, and it was interesting how it went from, it was all about jaywalking. We think it's kind of dumb that people get tickets for jaywalking. We're kind of reduce that. And in the article, it took about 7 paragraphs before they made it all about equality and all that stuff. And they kind of rolled it all into the San Francisco speech of about equality and this, that, and the other thing. And not shockingly enough, but so the new law,
the Freedom to Walk Act. That's what they call it. The Freedom to Walk Act.
The Freedom to Walk Act. As if you didn't have to walk before, California has now made it even easier for you to walk with freedom.
They gave us that freedom.
They gave us.
Sorry, I keep talking over you.
Thank you, California, for giving us the freedom to walk.
Yes.
The new law does not decriminalize jaywalking altogether. And funny story, I was on the way back from court this morning, and I was in the car with an Uber driver. Very sassy Uber driver. And we were driving up Fifth Avenue in San Diego. Comes across the street, and Uber driver starts honking at him, swearing at him, which I was like, oh, that's odd for an Uber driver. Okay. Well, now it's not illegal to do jaywalking in California. And he got very defensive about it. And he's like, no, actually, you can still get a ticket. It just has to be when it's like a safe area. I was like, oh, okay, excuse me. He like kind of yelled at me about it. And I was like, all right, buddy, you're really up on this law. But that's kind of what it is. The police have discretion now. If you're crossing in an area that is deemed to be an immediate hazard, you can get a ticket. So if it's on like a busy highway or a busy street and you're jaywalking, then you can get a ticket. And I think it starts at, hold on to your hats here. It's the ticket that you might get for jaywalking.
Okay. If it's an immediate hazard, wouldn't you just get hit by the car?
I guess it's not that immediate. I guess it's immediate.
Okay.
Well, this was one thing that the guy who wrote the bill came up with. He said it's kind of a gray area of enforcement enforce this, because what's an immediate area, or what's an immediate hazard, what's dangerous area. And his point was that there are neighborhoods in California that don't have cross. I find that crazy that there are neighborhoods in California that don't have crosswalks, but I think that's more an indictment.
Probably, those areas probably don't have a lot of cars either.
Yeah, if you don't have crosswalks, it's a busy area. But that was his whole thing, was that it is kind of like subjective. Again, I'm getting a ticket for jaywalking. I'd like to see like who was the last person who actually got a ticket for jaywalking in California. I bet you could find that pretty easily. But it's just not something I think the police are out in force worried about. Do you want to talk really briefly about the history of jaywalking and where did it come from?
Go ahead. Do you have that article in front of you?
No, because I heard the story before. So when they went into it, okay, I remember this story.
Okay.
Law came on to the books. I think it was, they said LA, but I thought it was New York. When the automobile first came out, obviously the streets of like New York full of cars because cars were a relatively new thing. So people would kind of like walk around. They would treat the streets like we walk here, the horses walk here. Then automobiles came around, and automobiles were like, well, we need to get through, and you have all these dumb people walking on the street, and we need to get through. The term jay was actually a slang term for an idiot back then. So they would call it jaywalking, meaning you're an idiot walking in the street. But the law itself was pushed by a lot of automobile lobbyists who wanted to kind of take over the roads because it would make it easier for driving roads. So this law basically came about thanks to the wonderful practice that is lobbying. The auto manufacturers were able to get that passed. And then once there was jaywalking laws, now the police, time you were walking across the street where you weren't supposed to, they could issue a lot of tickets, and that stopped people from walking. So that's why we have jaywalking laws.
Okay. One of the quotes from the article that I sent you was from Assembly member Phil Ting, who authored the bill. And he said, it's still technically illegal to cross the street in the middle of the street, but we're directing law enforcement not to cite people unless there's an immediate hazard. Okay, I get that. But I feel like after reading that quote, that this is kind of like another, police don't have the right to do that. And now it's, yet another thing that can easily be challenged in court for $20.
Yeah, I don't think it's that important. I don't think it's really that big of a deal that but I guess it was big enough of a deal that somebody in the legislature said, I'm going to write a bill to kind of weaken jaywalking. So that's the jaywalking law. So in case anybody says it's not illegal anymore, you have one more point on that.
Well, okay, so I sent you the article a few days ago. OC Register on December 30th published an article that in the 5 years ending December 30th, 2021, 375 pedestrians were killed by vehicles in Orange County. And then in the article that we were just talking about a minute ago, in Los Angeles County from January to September 2022, 106 pedestrians have been killed by drivers. So I thought that was interesting that like they want to ease up on this, but at the same time, I am all for easing up on laws because why did we need 1,000 more last year?
Yeah, and this is just 1 out of 1,000. And obviously that was the most important bill we were going to cover tonight. So thank you everyone for listening. We'll see you on the next one.
Do not jaywalk.
Really, yeah, don't jaywalk. That's the end of the story. All right, let's move. Now everyone's an expert on what jaywalking is, whether it's illegal or not. What's the next one that you want to move on to?
Well, regarding light laws, you mentioned the bicycle law, and it was important to you. Tell us why.
Okay, so we'll light one to keep the mood kind of light for now because we get into some heavier laws. From what I understand is the law is now that if you are driving down the street and there's a bicycle in your lane, you have to get over an entire lane to get around that bicyclist. You can no longer just kind of like scoot around them and kind of like just the road or like the line for an entire lane. This bugs me because where I work in downtown San Diego, they taken huge chunks of avenues, taken all the parking away, and they have created specific bike lanes. Now, I know not every road has a bike lane, but there have been numerous times, and there was one egregious time that I was driving home from work. There was a bicyclist in the car lane, not the bicycle lane. Now, there's a lane specifically for bicyclists because they've been complaining about it and whining for it forever. They get their lane. They're still riding the middle of the lane. Maybe this is just sour grapes, but at what point do we just admit defeat and say that the bicyclists now own the roads? We can never, if you're driving a car, you're going to be obsolete pretty soon, and it's just going to be the bicyclists are going to rule everything. I feel like that's where we're going. Is like the bicyclists get all the benefits in the world, they get all the free passes, but they never have to actually listen to any rules on the road anymore. That's how I feel, and I feel that's rules. It's like, okay, yeah, sure, let's just give more leeway to the bicyclists, because that's what we're all trying to strive for, is riding our bikes to work.
Well, they're saving the earth, so they should have special privileges.
Well, pretty soon the 405 is going to be like just all bicyclists, just like trying to like get around them, but like the bicyclists will be like in all 8 lanes, and you won't be able to get around them because there won't be any free lanes. That'll be the next thing.
Well, no, you just wait. Soon they will add a clause for this. It will be amended, and they will say electric vehicles are exempt from that law. They don't have to switch lanes. They'll just like, you're allowed because you're also saving the environment, so you get the same privileges. So
if someone's driving a Tesla, they can just run.
Well, not yet, but coming soon, I'm sure.
They will do that. Yeah, it's just another one of those laws that I'm like, I can't believe this is that important. I guess it was important to someone in the legislature. Also, I just have a problem with bicyclists because in my neighborhood, they ride down the sidewalks all the time, and when I'm trying to walk my dog, it really freaks her out, and she like starts going crazy because there's a bike coming at her. I don't blame her. It's a big scary bicyclist when you're a little dog. But they don't listen. They don't go on the roads like they're supposed to. They ride on the sidewalks when they're not supposed to. It's when they're supposed to. Like, if you're going to give all these benefits to bicyclists, why you actually also put in some like penalties for these bicyclists of like, okay, we've given you this lane, we've given you all these rules, we've given you all these protections, but guess what? You have to follow the rules of the road. You have to go with traffic. You can't be on a sidewalk. You'll get pulled over if you're doing this wrong, and we're going to give you a ticket starting at $20.
I think if you can't beat them, join them. I think you need to get a bike with a basket for Winnie.
Okay.
You know she would like that.
I don't know how she'd feel about that. Actually, she loves car rides, so she might actually sit in a basket on a bike.
See. I'm just saying.
I would not. I don't think I'd want to join them. I don't think I can make my commute on a bicycle. It'd take me 3 hours to get downtown, but I get a hell of a work. So,
all right.
Next law. Let's go a little bit more serious now, because this isn't all about like the silly laws that happen in California.
Well, I think it's important. Sorry, I was going to say, I just think it's important to. These are elected officials, and this is what they're working on. So it's important to point that out, because we're laughing about it, but they're getting paid to do this. So
they're getting paid a lot of money to write these laws. Yeah. Per diems, they're getting their salaries, they're getting their benefits. And this is what they're writing laws for, is bicyclists and lanes. All right, let's do a heavy one.
Okay.
What's a heavy one that you think we should do?
You choose. So I chose the first two.
Okay. Let's see. I'm kind of looking at this article. We have, oh boy. There's so many. We already went over bicyclists. Let's go. So we're going from bicycles to abortion. Let's talk about the abortion law that passed, AB 2223. It protects a woman or pregnant person who chooses to end a pregnancy from prosecution, even if the abortion is self-induced or happens outside the medical system. Is the requirement that coroners investigate stillbirths and protect someone who helps a pregnant person end their pregnancy voluntarily from criminal or civil liability. So we talked about last time, we talked about unpassing. So there's now a constitutional right that protects the right to abortion. You have this law that just passed that basically says you cannot criminally or civilly for self-induced abortions that happen outside the medical system. So basically there are no restrictions on abortions at all at this point. And even if you want a abortion that is not safe or not, and that's okay too, and no one can criminally prosecute you. Is that what I'm taking away from this?
Isn't there something in there about also the person assisting with the abortion is exempt from criminal?
Yes. Anybody assisting with this also will not be criminally liable.
Okay.
So there could be people performing abortions or helping to perform abortions. If they're not medically licensed or anything, they could still not be liable under this law.
I see lawsuits coming for that one because an abusive baby daddy, whether it's spouse, boyfriend, domestic partner, whatever you want to call it, who doesn't want the baby, which is often obviously a crisis pregnancy, is that like a woman isn't supported. And that's one reason why they would seek abortion, but they may be trying to get away. He may want the abortion and she doesn't. They perform the abortion via abusive matters and then claim that they were just assisting in it. And then it's his word against hers kind of thing.
That's actually a really good point. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, because if it's outside of practices, then I mean, I guess you're civilly liable for trying to help perform an abortion.
Right. I mean, I think in extremes I do, but like, where do we draw the line on this? There's no line. Obviously with abortion, it's just free for all at this point. And I think it's interesting that they passed that because they also passed SB 1375, which is a new law that will give qualified nurse practitioners and certified nurse midwives the ability to perform first trimester abortions in California without the supervision of a physician. What was the point in passing that law if we just let anybody do abortions? Like, it seems like there was no point.
So before existing, if a physician was not in attendance at the delivery of the fetus, existing law requires the fetal death to be handled as a death without medical attendance. This bill would delete the requirement that a coroner would hold inquests for death related to or following known or suspected self-induced or criminal. Would delete the requirement that an unintended fetal death be handled as a death without medical attendance. So, to your scenario before, prior to this bill, if it was done outside of medical, it would be classified as a death, like a homicide. Now they've taken away that. So you're right. It is basically a free for all under this bill. So anyone can do it, and anyone can perform or assist or do anything, and they're not really going to be civilly liable. I'm not really sure what the point of this, other than to California is the most free state when it comes to abortions and like how freely you can get abortions. And I why would you even need to go through this process outside of medical attendance when, as we've discussed before, clinics and places that will help, that are taxpayer funded here in California,
Right.
assist and do it for you if you can't pay for it.
And that was, I guess, one of the laws with SB 1375, or one of the reasons is because allegedly not all counties have abortion clinics. So this will enable easier access. But now if we're enabling easier access, why do we need to be okay with self-induced? Because, okay, obviously I'm against abortion, like I've said that many times, but I don't want women hurting themselves. Like we shouldn't, nobody should want women hurting themselves in the process of a self-induced abortion. That's,
I mean, realizes the scenario that the left is always crying about, which is, well, if you outlaw abortion or make it extremely hard to get, women will just go to back alley hanger abortions.
Right.
Sounds like it legalizes the back alley coat hanger abortions because there's really no liability for anyone who can want outside of medical attendance. So California has legalized this back alley way of doing it. And to me, that sounds kind of strange that they told the right, or people in Republican states that passed a lot of these heartbeat bills, well, now all these women are just going to go get illegal. And yet California is now allowing illegal and unsafe abortions, and no one's going to be held criminal. So they've created their own nightmare scenario by passing this bill.
Right. Yeah. Is there a term limit on this? Like, is it any week of pregnancy up to birth? Like, what do you know?
I saw something. Pregnant, and of course they have to present then the pregnant person. Of course that makes literally no sense. Bill Roth bring civil action. It doesn't really say. Who wrote this bill? Because this is dripping with Bay Area gobbledygook language. It's got to be. Who wrote this? Has got. Let me see. Oh, yeah, makes sense. Buffy Wicks. Yep. Buffy Wicks is almost, I would probably say, on the level of radical as Scott Wiener. She doesn't get nearly enough attention, which I think is a shame. I think Scott Wiener gets a lot more attention because a lot of what he pushes involving your children. So obviously he gets a lot more of the fire. But the stuff that she pushes this is absolutely awful. It says reproductive justice is the human right to control our body, sexuality, gender, work, and reproduction. It can only be achieved when all people, particularly women and girls, have women and girls. What about all pregnant people? That's not very inclusive.
Feel like that's like a derogatory term now.
How dare she say I thought men could get pregnant too. The Joker got pregnant in the new comic book. That was the whole hubbub today. If you saw that, have the complete economic, social, and political power and resources to make healthy decisions about their bodies, families, and communities in all areas of lives. At the core of the reproductive justice is the belief that in the right to bodily autonomy, the right to have children, the right to not have children, the right to parent the children, we have dignity and respect in safe and sustainable communities. I don't want to go down. We've talked about this before, and we'll save it for another time. But I love that they always put in here the right to have children is what we're after and protecting. And you and I both know that California, they don't really care about you having children. They don't want you to have children. They want you to not have children.
But if you do, take them to drag shows at your local public school.
Yeah. If you do have children, just let you know that the state does own them. Across the country, people have been criminally prosecuted for having miscarriages or stillbirths or for self-managing an abortion. I don't want to manage how you self-manage an abortion, but it sounds awful. That just sounds, I mean, that sounds criminal in my mind, but it's no longer criminal in California. I'm trying to find.
Can I say this? I don't know if I don't want to get you shut down, but it is utter bullshit that they keep saying that women are getting criminalized for having miscarriages. I'm so tired of that argument.
Go on.
Are we still here? I don't know if like you curse words. No, it's just nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. Nobody is getting criminalized for having an abortion that has never for having a miscarriage that has never happened.
Yeah, that's a weird
spontaneous miscarriage. Like it's just.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard of a story going to jail for a miscarriage. Like that doesn't. But
no, it doesn't. Not here.
No example in my mind of someone who's been criminally prosecuted for miscarriages or still. Like who's been criminally prosecuted for a stillbirth or a miscarriage? You had intent on, ending the life of this baby, and self-managing abortion. That you're trying to.
Yeah, that's you killed your baby.
Yeah, you had the intent to. There was something living in you, and you killed it. So
you didn't. Yeah, that's very frustrating to me. Miscarriages, spontaneous miscarriages, to be correct, are so common. They're so common. So if that were the case, then women would be, birthing persons would be being arrested left and right.
So existing law requires a coroner to register a fetal death after gestation unless it is the result of a legal abortion. God, this Jeez. This just keeps getting worse. Like this bill is full. So that's the existing law, and then obviously they got rid of it. Pregnancies can
choke on tea.
Nationwide. As many as 1 in 5 known pregnancies end in miscarriage. As 2,365 pregnancies per year end in stillbirth, meaning perinatal loss after 20 weeks gestation. Many pregnancy loss explanation. People also need to end pregnancy, including self-managed abortion, which means outside of this. Yeah. So this bill going into effect this year. So that should be interesting to see.
Did it on the 1st, or is it going in like July?
Beginning January 1st, 2023. This is one of the bills that will go into effect. It's already gone into effect. So,
okay. And me being an extremist, this is such a segue for assisted euthanization of ourselves. Like this is, like, yeah. I mean, we're already on our way there, but that this is just going to be one of those things. Well, it's okay to, kill the unborn baby. It's okay to self-induce an abortion. Why isn't it okay to help someone
abort
die?
Themselves?
Yes. It's not funny. I'm sorry. I should not laugh at that at all. It's not funny.
It's
sick.
Well, it's funny. It's just so crazy that like the left has gotten so obsessed with pushing as far as possible that they're just trying to lefty like the rest of the country and be like, look at how free and open we are. You can self-manage your own abortion. You won't get criminally prosecuted for it. So
I like to ask, if abortion were done via gunshot, then would you want it illegal?
Yeah, it's a good question, because guns are icky and which brings us to, I guess, our next law, which they kind of like intermingle. Sort of what the framework of how this bill, this abortion, is a kind of the mirror opposite of what they were in Texas. And instead, California came up with a law to kind of thumb their nose at Texas. And this is SB, hold on, I can pull it. SB
1327.
1327. And so basically, this is all predicated on the bill that was passed in Texas, where private citizens could basically go out, and if someone was performing an abortion illegally, private basically have the right to bring a civil or criminal action, civil action, and sue, and then kind of report all these people. And the idea was that you are kind of marshaling all the private citizens to keep an eye out for illegal abortion performed in the state of Texas that would go against their I think it's a heartbeat bill, somewhat like 15 weeks. Way, because Gavin Newsom has to pick a fight with every Republican governor that is as popular and more popular than him. He said, well, we're going to do the same thing, but for guns. And basically what it does, allows private citizens to collect $10,000 by suing who make or sell illegal ghost guns or assault style weapons. And basically it's all predicated on this shaky legal precedence that Texas, they're not even sure if like Texas can do what it's doing, but California is basically, Texas can get away with it, then we're going to try and get away with it. It's another one of those infringement laws on gun rights, to do with like manufacturers and retail stores can also be sued for $10,000. It's basically a way to scare more gun manufacturers out of the state. But it is interesting that the law we were just talking about is what Texas was trying to prevent, which was illegal abortions. So if Texas people could sue California for performing the abortions that are illegal, what they're for.
Right. Cal Matters calls this a political stunt, which it is, but it's yeah. They're mad at Texas for their abortion law. So then first we're like, we're a sanctuary state for abortions. Come to California and we'll help you get an abortion. We'll help you get an abortion legally. We'll allow you apparently to come here and do a self-induced abortion. And we'll make sure that nurse practitioners can perform first trimester abortions all up and down the state where they don't have abortion clinics. So what is the point of this law? Because it's so irrelevant. It's just, so this Cal Matters article, they go on to say that, first of all, SB 1327 would self-destruct if the Texas Supreme Court or the U.S. Supreme Court invalidates the Texas law. Secondly, there's very little chance that there would be a successful lawsuit. The firearms that are specifically targeted by legislation are already illegal under California law, and the major arms makers that Newsom implies would be punished take great pains not to sell the prohibited products. Makers of black market ghost guns could be sued, but only if one could find them. And even if they were identified, they are not likely to be wealthy enough to attract the attention of a fee-motivated attorney.
It's interesting, the language I'm looking at right now says the bill would make these provisions inoperative upon of a specified law in Texas. Those provisions on January 1st of the following year. Well, I mean, if a law is found to be unconstitutional in both the California and the U.S. Constitution, you don't get time to wind it down. It's immediately struck down. But
right. It goes on to say, yeah, sorry. The article goes on to say, finally, a federal law, rightly or wrongly, protects firearms manufacturers from liability suits.
Yeah. So this is absolutely a political stunt. So congratulations, your tax dollars well spent on it's just a political stunt for Gavin Newsom. And likely, if the Supreme Court ends up turning over the Texas law, this will also go the way of the dodo bird as well. But there is another law that they did pass. Let me see if I can find it. And then I'm going to let you pick the next one. Oh my goodness. I'm looking at all these laws and there's so many. I don't have it specifically in front of me. They did pass a law that prevents the selling of firearms and ammunition on any state grounds, which basically means all those held on like state fairgrounds and stuff like that are based.
Right.
You can no longer have any of those. So I hope you enjoyed like your big goes like the Del Mar one that comes down here.
Well, what's interesting is that brings in money for the state.
Yeah, because they rent it and they pay a whole bunch of money to rent out.
Right. I'm sure every vendor has to get a city business license, and then they rent the facility, which makes money. And then, of course, it brings in tourists, which brings in local money.
Mm-hmm.
So why would they want to do away with that?
Because guns are.
Okay.
That's basically California's position on all guns. Guns are icky. All right. I've already picked 2 in a row. So why don't you pick the next one?
All right. We're going to go kind of light and silly. The pink tax. AB 1287. Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
That was the one you'd pick.
Hold on, wait. So this would prohibit an individual or business from charging a different price for a product based on the customer's gender. By banning this practice, this bill would eliminate the pink tax, which supporters call the additional cost to female consumers. 2 products are considered substantially similar if they share a brand, as well as similar materials, functions, and designs. So the bill authorizes the Attorney General to seek a court order to stop violations and courts to impose a penalty of as much as $10,000 for the first violations and $1,000 for each subsequent violation. So basically, a product such as razor blades, I guess, shampoo, whatnot, deodorant.
Mm-hmm.
I guess they charge more if it's marketed towards women and it has more feminine colors. I shouldn't have said women. I should have said different gender. No, I'm serious. I don't think that the word woman is in the bill. So basically,
is it a blue tax as well? Like if they overcharge guys' products because it's marketed towards guys, is that like the same thing? So like if guys' products are more than what women's products are, is it the same thing?
But so many things about this. I sent you a screenshot. Do you have it? Did you get that?
I did.
Do you want to pull that up? Because it made me laugh. Like I said, the word woman is not in this bill. And this was a TikTok that Gavin did a while back. They were very excited about this. So I took a screenshot of the TikTok, the intro. I don't see it yet.
Hold on. Keep talking.
I'm talking because I have a Band-Aid. So it's pulling up. It's okay. I really want to see the screenshot. First off, my opinion on this is that it's not going to lower the cost of items marketed towards females. It's just going to raise the cost of items marketed towards male. Like, okay, we're not going to, lower this pink deodorant. We're just going to raise the cost of the blue deodorant. Bam, done. So that did nothing. Like, that's my opinion, of course. But he says, but can you read it to me? Because it's very small on my screen.
Yeah. it says products with packaging and design targeted for women cost approximately $2,300 extra a year. And his caption has eliminated the pink text, little hand clapping emoji. And then the first comment under it is yas, and we love you.
But he says woman. Like, this
Targeted
is,
for
and
women.
I'm not even trying to be funny, but they keep doing what they're accusing all of us of doing, of this whole like genderizing thing, and gender is fluid, and how dare we say woman, and these products are geared towards women. No, it's geared towards person who identifies this, whatever. But yet he goes and uses the verbiage that we're not supposed to be using. And so, and then they call it pink tax because they're associating pink with women, which
is a stereotype.
I don't care as I'm wearing pink, but it's just like, you're doing it wrong, Gavin. So, on a serious note, aren't we a free market society?
Well, yeah, I mean, you would think so.
Supposed to be.
Yes. And I guess if you don't like it, or if you don't like these products, I'm going to pull the screenshot away. I mean, I guess if you just don't like it and you find that these suit you, you can just pay for something else. Like I've heard before that I've heard like friends identify as women because they were women. Say like, oh, I'll buy men's razors because men's razors are cheaper than women's razors. Now, I don't know if that's true or not.
True, and they're totally the same.
But then maybe they are completely the same. And cool. I wonder if I could scan real quick. I just find it is interesting that if we believe in gender fluidity and that gender is just sort of this social construct, and they say stuff like pregnant persons, then why do they champion these bills that are exclusive men? And it may backfire in a way of like, what if guys' stuff turns out to be more expensive than women, and it's the same exact thing? What if I go to pick up a deodorant and I go, hey, this Old Spice deodorant is more expensive than Dove deodorant? Like, do I get to make a they're technically the same thing? Like, how do you define like what's exactly the same thing?
Right.
It's kind of like it's kind of like how pharmaceutical companies get to continue the copyright of something and hold the copyright of it or patent for it forever, is because they'll change like a there. So this drug that's supposed to be generic isn't generic anymore because it has one compound different. So how do you tell if my Old Spice deodorant, the same exact thing as your Dove women's deodorant? And what if I find a men's product that is all natural? Like there's some guys, natural is like $14 a bar. Do I get to compare that to women's deodorant? Like, I guess it's sort of subjective. And I guess it's up to the state to kind of is this private citizens? Because the state's not going around looking at Target and going like, oh, these deodorants look the same, but one's more expensive. Suing Unilever because
if next week you decide to do an experiment to figure out if Dove and Old Spice are actually the same and you're paying twice as much or something, and then you let the Attorney General know and they do in fact impose a fine, it's not going to you. You were not hurt. You, the consumer, you don't get that money. It's just going to go to the state.
No, it doesn't help.
That's another thing. Like they're cheering for this passing of the pink tax, and they're going to save you so much money by getting money from the no longer free market.
Yeah. Well, laws, I think that, and people will set all say like, yes, queen, go. We love you, Gavin Newsom. But it's
someone was like, "You're my new daddy." Sorry, that was one of the comments. They were literally like, "Yeah."
I just felt my stomach get queasy.
I'm sorry.
It's not something that's like going to change overnight. It's not like you're going to walk into Target or wherever and all of a sudden be like, oh, my deodorant doesn't cost more than the guy's deodorant anymore. Thanks, Gavin Newsom. Like, it's just sort of like an empty victory of like, hey, we did this and we got rid of the pain. There's a law. If you want to, you can report it. Companies will have to abide by it. But it's not going to overnight. Like, you're not going to first bill, this is already in effect. We're not going to see a difference right away, but it is what maybe people in the comments who are watching, maybe they can let me know or let us know. Do they think there's between guys products and girls products when it comes? I don't know. I don't really look at girls products when I go into Target. So I know, shocker. But if you want to let us know in the comments, I don't think it's a big difference. And again, not sort of the big important issues of California. All right, moving on. Let's see. All the ones. Oh, there was one I wanted to talk about that is going into effect. It's not going into effect on January 1st. It's going into effect. They are on a timeline. Who knows if it's going to get pushed back? It's this whole care court idea. And I'm going to try and boil down what the heck this care court thing is. We talked about it on the last podcast. Mm-hmm. Care court is basically can file a petition to allow people to sort of be submitted to court if they have like schizophrenic issues or mental health issues. It passed with like resounding support from both parties. Now, that's not saying much because the Republican Party doesn't really exist in Sacramento. But either way, only 2 of the state's 120 legislators vote against it, and it was signed into law on September 14th. Theoretically work like this. Family responders and behavioral health workers will be able to submit a petition to court signed under penalty of perjury. A person with untreated schizophrenia, spectrum, or other psychotic disorders that shows why they qualify for a care court. In order to qualify, the person must be likely to survive safely without supervision or be a to themselves or others without support. The petition must include either an affidavit from a licensed healthcare professional who examined them or tried to, or proof the person was recently detained under intensive treatment. The court would then order a clinical evaluation of the person and review the evaluation to see if it qualifies for care court services. If they do, they'll get a legal counsel supporter, an advocate to walk them through the process, as well as a care plan that can include recommended treatment, medication, and housing. Medication can be court ordered, but not during 12 months. A participant will have to attend sure they're adhering to the plan, and counties are providing the court-ordered services. Following a year, a person could receive another year of treatment or evaluation plan, which would not be enforceable by the court. If a person received the court-mandated services, treatment, they could be considered by the court for conservatorship, though refusing medication alone will be grounds for failure. The idea is to make it easier for people who need help seeking it to get it before they lose legal autonomy or end up in jail. So, long story short, it's going to be implemented in 7 counties. San Francisco, LA, Orange County, San Diego County. I like to say Placer County is another one. I can't think of the other one, but there's 7 counties. They're kind of like roll. So they're letting sort of the big counties with probably the most try it out first. Probably might not be the greatest idea because they're also the busiest. So there's probably going to be a lot of demand for it. Orange ready to go according to them because they said they already have drug and mental health court. So they're kind of already ready for this. It's a kind of tackle homelessness by forcing a lot of the homeless with mental issues into this care court system, basically saying you're going to be this mental rehab and all of that. We're going to keep checking up on you. If you're not listening to it, there will be, so you can't fall out of this program. And I guess that's sort of the carrot and the stick. It's like you petition, the court says, hey, it looks like you need some help. They're going to order you on this plan. If not, or if you don't make it through the whole 12 months, then we can either put you in jail. The problem with this is the framework for how they would do this is kind of stymied by this, what they call LPS conservatorships. And I hope I'm not getting like super wonky for the listeners out there who are probably like, I'm falling asleep. What the heck this guy's talking about? LPS stands for the Lanterman-Petrus Short Act, which in 1967 was when they started to phase out mental institutions here in California. It used to be, in the olden days, if there was a crazy person on the street, the old paddy wagon can roll up with a straitjacket and say, okay, you're kind of a little bit of a dangerous society. You look like you're out of your mind. Ronald Reagan, of all people, was actually the governor when he signed this and started to get rid of all mental health institutions in California, which I think set us of where we are now. So this whole LPS conservatorship is very hard to get. Easy process. They made it hard on purpose. A lot of people, including one of our favorite state senators, oddly enough, Scott Wiener, has actually been trying to loosen, allow for more conservatorships of people with mental disorders who are kind of out there, because they know a little bit too strict, and they kind of need to, if they're going to tackle this homelessness issue. So we've kind of come full circle since 1960, where they got rid of the mental health institutions. They thought it was a good thing because they were protecting civil rights. Now we're sort of all the way back around, and we've seen the result 50 years or so, 40 or 50 years. You kind of let it go for too long. Now you have cities that are basically overrun with homeless people, and a lot of them dealing with mental health issues. Whew. So that's going into effect in October. I into effect by October. They pushed it back already from June. Now it's going to be October. We'll see what. But both of our counties will have care courts by October of this year. So, thoughts on that while I take a sip of my tea after all that?
That was a lot. I feel like, wow, I don't even, my thoughts are actually all over the place right now. So I don't have any great thoughts yet.
I will say this.
Tell us your thoughts.
I'll try to say this without throwing up in my mouth. This lines up perfectly. This will be the first year of Newsom's new administration, so he still has 4 more years. If this ends up being a success, this might be the biggest political success of his entire political career. Okay. And it would, he wants to run for president. This would be a huge feather in his cap to kind of say, look, I was the governor, and then you have to put your hands on your hips. I was the governor homelessness in California, which nobody said was possible, and everyone made fun of California. I solved homelessness. Now, far left progressive wing of the party, who is all up in arms about civil rights and people and throw them into these facilities, may not like it. But when you're running for president, big of a difference to him, especially if he's trying to the White House. But it would be the biggest political victory if it pays off for him. If it turns into a disaster, it turns into a boondoggle, completely different story. It'll just be another smear on his whole career as governor.
So which way do you want it to go?
I mean, selfishly, it's tough because I need, because it gotten to be such a bad issue in California. I can't go anywhere. Lots of places in my neighborhood, there's a lot of homeless. We don't even feel safe walking down the street. Downtown has gotten really, really area. So on one hand, I'm kind of like, we kind of need to do something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want Gavin Newsom to get the political, but that's just being really selfish. I lean that I want something has to be done, whether it's Gavin Newsom or the ghost of Ronald Reagan. I don't really care. Something has to happen here with the homeless, and I'll be interested to see how this kind of pans out in the future.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see how long is that, because don't they have to kind of report back on things within like a year or whatever? Like, do you know what for the what do they decide it succeeds or it doesn't?
I think there's probably some oversight committee who's watching all of this and what's going on.
Right, of course.
But the first couple of years are going to be tough because I have an idea of like how much it's going to cost to do all this.
Mm-hmm.
And like the state is basically funding to do this and put all this into motion.
Right.
They have no idea. One of the quotes I saw was even like how many people you have to employ is like a shot in the dark of like, are you going to get court appointed attorneys, like private attorneys who will work for a reduced or hourly wage to do it, which is something they already do. They have court appointed attorneys for conservatorships, but that's a different type of conservatorships that they start to implement or ask them. There's a lot of questions. I think I was actually discussing this with somebody on Twitter, and they were like, do you have any details? And I was like, no. Even someone like me who's in this area of law and knows this, I'm sitting here going, I have no idea what's going to happen. But so for all the people who are in those counties, things might change. Maybe they won't change.
No, it's not going to change that quick, actually.
No.
And so I actually think if it is successful, it's not going to be successful the next 4 years. There's going to be a lot of trial and error. Yeah. And so even if they're seeing some improvement, I don't think it's going to actually be a big win for Gavin during his time here in California as our governor. Like, I think we would be looking at closer to like 8-10 years down the road to really see if there's been big improvement, big success. Because like you said, there's so much unknown, and there's going to be a lot of trial and error, which, sorry, conservatives, but we're going to have to give some room for grace for that. We can't start complaining in a year when things didn't literally have this big impact, because it's just, there are so many complicated pieces to it.
Yeah. And if anybody knows anything about the government, it never gets rolled out. Try, if ever, it gets rolled out perfectly or well. And I wouldn't be surprised if there is a ton of CLU that hold it up, and like, so I wouldn't be surprised if stuff federal court, it gets caught in state court, it goes up to the California Supreme Court. But it did get a lot of legislative support because I guess people were like, it's at least some sort of solution. So, all right, we got a couple more before we finish off tonight. Is there any that you want to specifically focus on?
I think the SB 107 is important, the transgender youth. Okay. I would like for you to talk about this because there's obviously a lot of legal stuff, and I have a question for you after you speak.
Sure. So this is one of, was this a Scott Wiener bill? Not surprisingly.
Of course.
No, actually AB 107. So it's not actually Scott Wiener because it came from the assembly.
Oh. My apologies, Scott Wiener.
I'm looking. Sorry, Scott Wiener. Oh, no, wait. SB. Oh, they got it wrong on the article. It's SB 107. I'm looking at. the Fox 11 article that lists them all out.
Do I retract my apologies to Scott Wiener?
Absolutely retract your apology.
No apologies, Scott Wiener.
No apologies, Scott Wiener. I had a feeling this bill because he always tweets about it and brags about it. The bill aims to stop other states from punishing children who come to California for transgender surgeries, and is designed to stop Texas and other conservative states from removing parents who allow them to receive gender-affirming health care defined as medically necessary that respects the gender identity of the patient as experienced and defined by the patient. That would include hormone therapy to suppress secondary sex characteristics to align the patient's appearance or physical body with the patient's gender identity. The law will block out-of-state subpoenas, health providers from sharing information with out-of-state entities related to gender-affirming care, and it would give California courts authority to make an initial child custody determinant if the child propose obtaining gender-affirming care. Yeah, this one is this one has a whole bunch of legal issues because, first off, they're true children and they are minors. You don't have the authority as a state on its own to basically go pound sand if they're in another state. So if a child decides against their parents' will, I'm going to somehow get to California, I'm going to get this surgery. I don't know how they're going to get this surgery unless or like an aunt and uncle or like, but have legal control over their children. The fact that California is basically saying, nope, if a hey, bring my children back, they're not supposed to be in California getting gender affirming surgery. California is saying, yeah, we're not going to listen to your subpoenas and we're not going to abide by it. And it's interesting in the text of the United States Constitution generally requires the state to give credit to the public acts, records, and judicial proceedings of every other state. Existing law authorizes, upon the demand made by another state, the extradition of a act in the state that results in crime demanding state. Existing law sets forth procedures by which a person may enforce a judgment for the payment of money. Child custody issue orders by the court other than California. So, already admits in the first opening line that the United States requires that states give full faith and credit to their laws and their proceedings. This bill basically says, because we're not going to listen to that. So while we say that, we're not going to listen to it. This says you need to send these children back. We have a child cut. California is going to say, nope, sorry. Go pound sand. So I think there's going to be a lot of issues. I would be surprised if this becomes, I wouldn't be surprised if it gets sued in federal court and it actually makes it to the Supreme Court, because this is a question of the full faith and credit clause of the United States. And can states basically just tell other states to go, go shove it, push this radical agenda, and you can't make us say no or do anything else, even though, and this is all what we were saying before, is that California does, you have as the parent of your child, California is as the parent of your child, even if you're from out of state, they still see it as your child. So those are my legal thoughts on it.
Is there an age minimum in this, like 3-year-olds, like 5-year-olds? What is the age minimum here, if any? 10 and up? Like define child in this bill. I want to know that.
Yeah, that would be, let's see. We'll do a control. Not agencies. Marriage. No, that's not what we want. Huh. Given age. So I guess any child.
So
really,
I'm sure that'll be challenged. But then also, like for divorced parents in their custody agreements, it will talk about, most likely, if you were smart in your custody agreement, it's going to talk about medical decisions that the child, gets to get. And so imagine like, one parent is anti the gender affirming care and the other parent's like, well, we're going to California and you can't do anything about it. Like that's going to get challenged right away in their home states, at least.
Yep.
So that'll be a whole mess there. And this is just sad anyway. Like performing hysterectomies on girls, like it ruins your body. Don't do that to your young kid. There's all like your rib cage falls. There's constant pain, not necessarily all the time. I don't have one. I was reading about them, but I was like, what, if they start performing these things on women that are sometimes necessary, like what happens with the girls? And then it's like, why do that to these young girls? Anyway, that's a different topic, but
I try to be, I guess, as a Californian, I try to be as libertine in terms of, you know what, man, do you like you're an adult, you can do what you want. I'm not going to.
But this is not adults.
But exactly, all of a sudden, I turn into a complete the opposite end of the spectrum. I become like Mussolini, where I'm like, nope. And kids, and you start dealing with kids and all this stuff. Nope. I put my foot down. This isn't allowed. Like, just stop. And this is what I think bugs me about Scott Wiener, and why I have this compulsive need that every time he tweets out something stupid, I have to kind of reply to it, because I just feel like I always have to get a word in with him. And I'm glad that he finally got on the national stage for that like faux. Did you follow that? The whole faux like voicemail or whatever. He did the Jussie Smollett.
No.
Like, he like wrote out in his Apple Notes like of supposedly, because Charlie Kirk put Scott Wiener on blast for one of the weird things. Charlie Kirk tweeted or posted it to his like national audience. He's got millions of followers, so everyone was like attacking him on social media. And so he showed a transcript of voicemail that somebody left, like the most stereotypical, like, hey, this blah blah blah, and like you should go and die and da da da. But it's like, okay, the voicemail, just you can screen record it and you can play us the voicemail instead. An Apple Note with the transcript of what they.
Let me guess, he deleted it before he could record it.
I guess, but yeah, that's not how transcripts come forward. They don't come through into your Apple Notes. So a lot of people called him out for being the new, for pretending like he's
good. I mean, that's a dumb thing to call him out for, because there's a lot worse. But start somewhere.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more anti-Scott Wiener people out there than there. Anyway, the point of what I was getting at was when, like, just the kids, leave the kids out of it. Just leave the kids out of it, and there should be to start basically allowing the trafficking of children across state lines to California, so they can do these gender affirming surgeries. It's just so odd to me, and it just, I don't know. I don't know what else to say besides just like leave the kids and stop pushing all this stuff on them. So this is a horrible law. I hope it goes up to the Supreme Court, and I hope the Supreme Court knocks it down and saying like, you can't do this, and you can't tell other states to go pound sand when it comes to custody battles and what children can do. And yeah, I
mean, that's been the big thing, though, is trying to take away parental rights. Like you say, leave the kids alone. Yeah, that's been one of our biggest fights. Yeah. Leave the kids alone. It's like that. Yeah. Gun rights.
Yeah.
Leave our kids alone. Leave our guns alone.
Yeah. Just leave them. Just basically all of that. Leave us alone. Let's see. We can see if we can round out with a couple more, because there's a whole bunch. But the Lunar New Year is now a state.
Good. I've been waiting on that one. When?
To celebrate today. In 2023, the Lunar New Year falls on January 22nd.
Oh, holiday coming soon.
So I don't know if my work recognize it, but I'm going to ask. I'm going to say, New
You
Year is now
better.
a state holiday. Workers can also Genocide Remembrance Day, which is April 24th. That sounds like a cheery holiday. Juneteenth or Native American Day, September 22nd. So there's like, and then there's Cesar Chavez, which the courts are actually always shut down for Cesar Chavez Day. Wage transparency. This requires companies that employ at least 15 people to include salary ranges in all job postings and provide them existing employees upon request. So it just gives information about salary.
They're going to be like $1 to $1 million.
It could be anywhere between those things.
Or I guess minimum wage, not $1. $15.50, because that's the new minimum wage now because of inflation.
Yep,
so
that's another
be
one.
Like $15.50 an hour to $1 million an hour. That is the range.
That went into effect.
Yeah, that was because
an hour and 50 years. At least 6 cities raising their minimum wage higher than $15.50. I know San Diego just raised their minimum wage to $16.30.
Yes,
that's businesses. We talked about jaywalking, hit and run. Other one I saw that I thought, oh, this one's really interesting. And I thought this whole thing we were talking about, like California misgendering, of all going against their not walking the walk and the talk. They want to do this new thing called the feather alert.
I saw that. Yes, I'm familiar. Mm-hmm.
So for people listening, the feather alert allows law enforcement agents to initiate an alert when an indigenous person has been kidnapped or reported missing under unexplained or suspicious circumstances. Consistent with the department's existing amber, blue, and silver alert, this new feather alert program encourages the use of radio, television, and social media to spread information. I just found that. Yeah, go ahead.
Were they I'm serious. Were they previously excluded from amber alerts? That one confused me.
I'm more focused on the fact that they decided to call it the feather alert.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I get your point.
Mm-hmm. I was like, oh, okay. I mean, that seems like
I see where you're going there.
One of the most stereotypical things about indigenous people of feather headdresses and stuff like that, which not all indigenous people wear. But sure, that'd be like if a Mexican person went missing, they'd be like sombrero alert or something like that. That's what it makes me feel like. So I say that because my wife is Mexican, so
okay.
She'd probably find that hilarious. But now if you see an alert on your phone for a feather alert, you know what a feather alert is. An indigenous person has gone missing. I think the rest of them, I'll post the links in the show notes if anybody wants to kind of go through these themselves. And again, there were thousands over and were signed into law.
997.
Go through them all. God bless you if you can. These are just sort of the highlights.
So were there any laws that you actually liked? Whether we talked about them or not, did California pass any laws that you agree with?
Toll exemptions for some veterans. I saw this one. This one looked good. If you're a disabled veteran, Pearl Harbor survivor, prisoner of war, receive distinctions such as the Purple Heart Congressional Medal of Honor. If you get plates that show you're a veteran, you won't have to pay tolls on any roads or highways.
A veteran or all the things you just listed in addition?
That are issued to those things, those disabled veteran Pearl Harbor. So not all veterans, but I mean, it should be all veterans, but it's a nice little gesture. So I don't know. I'm not a fan of passing more laws just for the sake of passing laws. So it's tough for me to say I like this new law. Nothing stuck out to me as like I'm glad this law. There was a law about criminal records before, and this is also getting sort of. It used to be when you wanted an expungement, you could only get an expungement of your record if you were on probation and you completed your probation. If you were sentenced to prison, state prison, you could not get an expungement. I do like that they've expanded that so people can get a second chance if they had to go to state prison for something. They've done their time, completed their sentence, moving on with their lives. They never want to do anything again. They can get the expungement. I know some people think, you're letting people off and all that and stuff. And if you served your
There were
time,
certain crimes, though, that if you committed that you can't, that you're not allowed to, right?
Right. Yeah, it's a lot to do with like sexual crimes.
Right. Violent.
That usually like you've been convicted of that. There's no chance of you ever really getting any sort of second chance. Serious or violent crimes. But if something that sentenced you to, and you can get expunged. So if you've if you've served your debt to, you can get expunged and move on with your life.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that. That was pretty good. Are there any laws you liked out of all of these laws? Is it the pink tax? You're happy the pink tax?
No, well, that didn't do anything for me. And like I said, free market. It just does away with free market. So that annoyed me. Because people should be allowed to compete, businesses. A law we didn't discuss that really annoys me is the DNA for rape kits that cannot be used to solve other crimes. That frustrated me because we should definitely have a database of rapist DNA to help solve other crimes, but that they're now exempt, I guess. That it's basically any DNA from a rape kit can only be used for that crime, not against other, like they can't, I guess, say, oh, it's a match for this.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an odd one. There's some things that they pass, you're like, the legislature, and they couch it in like social justice and all that. But in reality, the way it looks to most average Californians and people is, it just seems like you're trying criminals more get off and not like we should be like crime is the number one issue, one of the top issues in California along with homelessness, and you're making it easier. So
well, that's one thing I never understand either, though, is that we're so like worried about abortions for women who were raped, but we are not worried about the rapist. It's like, no, this woman shouldn't have to go through this pregnancy, but that man should be free. Like, let's be soft on crime for the rapist. So let's not use his DNA to see if he also raped other women. Let's put him in jail for a night. He'll learn his lesson.
That cannot be used to convict a criminal or rap song lyrics.
Yeah.
That was who was it who was one famous like LA rapper was involved with that. So like even if your rap lyrics say like I want to kill this person in court, that was a big issue. Oh, the bill known as decriminalizing artistic restrict the use of rap lyrics as evidence by prosecutors in criminal cases. The law would require judges to press prosecutors on the purpose behind including lyrics as evidence and interrogate whether doing so injects racial bias into the proceedings. Yeah. So, I don't know. I guess you didn't like the fur ban.
I saw that one too, and I was like, is taxidermy illegal now? Like I was like literally like trying to, and I'm like, whatever, and I just closed my tab.
It doesn't apply to products or those used for religious or tribal purposes. And it excludes the sale of leather, dog, and cat fur. That sounds weird. Why would anybody want to wear cat fur?
But I can keep my cat. I have a nice cat fur coat. What are you talking about? I have no fur coats.
Cowhides, deer, sheep, and goat skin, and anything preserved through taxidermy. So, okay. I was surprised that California. I just thought fur had fallen out of vogue so much because of the social pressure campaign. Figured it was already banned across the country, but now California is the first state to ban the sale and manufacture of new fur products. So go California.
Go PETA. Woo!
That was something that I'm sure everyone was really worried about, was the scourge of fur products in California.
Hey, all those celebrities, sorry. I was going to say all those celebrities that are getting those posed naked for PETA, it was important to them. They stripped down for animals.
I'm sure that's all they did it for.
Yeah.
For all altruistic reasons. That's why. Good. All right. So with that, like I said, I'm going to put the links in the show notes if you want to go look at more. There's a lot. So like I said, we weren't going to be able to get through a lot of them. We got through probably about I would say less tonight. But I think we got through the big ones, and we've been talking for an hour and a half. Yeah. So I'm sure we'll see another glut of 1,200 bills coming down the pike this month and next month.
Session.
We'll be following those as well.
Yeah, they started yesterday session, so I'm watching. Want to see.
Hopefully one day comes in California where we don't need to feel the need to pass 1,200 laws every single year, for the sake of passing laws. Hopefully, maybe. But I just don't understand why legislators. This is why I think state legislators need to be part-time jobs, because there's no reason to have 1,200 bills and 1,000 new laws every in California. It just gets to a point where you're like, what are you legislating on? Obviously fur bans and pink tax and bicyclists and lanes and stuff like that. That's what you end up legislating on. So any final thoughts, Camille, before we sign off for the night?
No, I think we talked long enough.
Excellent. All right. As always, this channel and support this show, make sure you send it to at least text it to one person, send them Facebook Messenger if you're still on Facebook, Instagram, whatever it is you do. That's the best way to support this show. Make sure you subscribe to this channel, whether it's on Spotify or YouTube or Google or Apple. Make sure you leave a review, all that stuff. And it's every Thursday night at 8 p.m. live on YouTube, and then you can go listen to the audio or watch this video later. So have a good night, everybody.